All right, let's get right into it. We're going to break down one of the most truly terrifying and, frankly, evolutionarily brilliant pathogens on the entire planet, the rabies virus. This is a killer so smart, so sophisticated, it literally rewrites its victim's behavior just to ensure its own survival. And the result? A nearly 100% fatality rate once those symptoms show up.
And it all really boils down to this one central, horrifying paradox. Just try to imagine this. You are desperately, painfully thirsty, but the mere sight or even the sound of water throws your body into violent, agonizing convulsions. This is the absolute core mystery of rabies. Why this specific, incredibly cruel form of torture?
So the first thing we need to get straight is that this isn't a psychological fear. It's not like being afraid of heights. Hydrophobia, the fear of water, is a physical, totally involuntary reflex. The virus has hijacked the nerves in the throat, and it turns the simple act of swallowing into an excruciating ordeal. And that distinction, well, it's the key to understanding the virus's entire strategy.
So, to solve this mystery, here's our roadmap. We're going to start with that paradoxical thirst. Then, we'll uncover how the virus pulls off a perfect biological heist to get into the nervous system. We'll see how it becomes a master of manipulation, look at our long fight against it, and finally, see the path to wiping it out for good. And make no mistake, the stakes are unbelievably high. Every single year, an estimated 59,000 people die from rabies, and most of those are in Asia and Africa. And here's the real tragedy. With modern medicine, almost every single one of those deaths is preventable. That's why understanding this virus is just so critical.
So how does this all begin? Well, you have to think of the rabies virus as a master burglar. Its target is the central nervous system, the most well-guarded, most secure system in our entire body. And getting inside requires stealth, it requires deception, and it requires a very special set of tools.
So how does it get past security? It uses something on its surface called a glycoprotein, or G protein, as a set of skeleton keys. Get this, it has a section that is so similar to snake venom that it can trick the receptors at our nerve endings into letting it in. But it's not a one-trick pony. It can also use several other receptors, which makes it incredibly versatile at breaking and entering our neurons.
And here's the heist in action. After a bite, the virus just lays low in the muscle, multiplying quietly, trying to stay off the radar of the immune system. Then, it makes the jump into a peripheral nerve. From there, it hijacks the nerve's internal highway system, riding it all the way up to the spinal cord and into the brain. And once it's taken over central command, it sends copies back out, with a crucial stop at the salivary glands to prepare its escape.
Now, the virus isn't just a passive passenger here. It actively latches onto a motor protein called dynein, basically forcing the nerve cell to give it a one-way piggyback ride straight to the brain. It moves pretty slowly, maybe 12 to 100 millimeters a day. And this slow, deliberate journey, that explains the really long and variable incubation period. It can be a few weeks or it can be over a year, and all that time the victim feels perfectly fine, completely unaware of the invasion that's underway.
Okay, now we get to the absolute heart of it. The terrifying symptoms of rabies, the aggression, the confusion, the hydrophobia, they are not random side effects. They are a calculated, brutally effective strategy. They are the virus's getaway plan, and they are designed for one single purpose: to spread.
You know, one of the biggest puzzles for scientists has always been this stark contrast. On one hand, the virus causes absolute chaos in behavior, but on the other, when you actually look at the brain tissue under a microscope, there's very little physical damage. The neurons are mostly intact, and that tells you everything. The virus isn't a wrecking ball trying to destroy the brain, it's a puppeteer trying to control it, keeping the host alive and moving just long enough to find another victim.
And right here is the answer to our original mystery. By causing those awful throat spasms, the virus stops the victim from swallowing. Why? Because that keeps the mouth flooded with virus-packed saliva. At the exact same time, it infects the part of the brain that controls emotion, which flips on a switch for extreme aggression and removes fear, compelling the host to bite. It's a perfect two-part plan. Load the weapon, then fire it.
Now, this manipulation usually leads to what we call furious rabies. That's the classic picture you have in your head, with the hydrophobia and aggression. But there is another form, known as paralytic rabies. And instead of agitation, the patient just experiences a slow, creeping paralysis that starts at the bite. It's less traumatic, and because of that, it often gets misdiagnosed.
And about 80% of human cases are that furious form. From an evolutionary point of view, that makes total sense, right? The aggressive, biting form is way more effective at spreading the virus than the one that just paralyzes the host. The virus's most successful strategy is the one we see the most.
So that brings us to humanity's long and often brutal fight against this ancient enemy. For thousands of years, we had absolutely no defense, which led to some truly desperate and horrifying attempts at a cure.
I mean, the history is grim. Early Romans tried to cure hydrophobia by repeatedly holding victims underwater until they nearly drowned. Later on, people used useless things like madstones or would burn the wound with a hot iron. The massive, world-changing turning point was 1885. Louis Pasteur develops a vaccine and successfully uses it on a young boy, Joseph Meister, after he'd been bitten. Much more recently, the Milwaukee Protocol, an attempt to put patients in a coma to let their body fight it off, gave us a brief flicker of hope, but that hope has pretty much faded.
Yeah, let's be really clear about this. Despite saving one patient way back in 2004, the Milwaukee Protocol has failed again and again ever since. The medical consensus today is that it doesn't work and it should not be used. The handful of people who have survived symptomatic rabies in history likely did so because of their own unique immune response, not because of that treatment. The search for a cure, for now, has hit a dead end.
But while a cure might be out of reach, this story is not over. In fact, it's entering its most hopeful chapter yet. We are now developing the tools not just to treat exposures, but to make human deaths from rabies a thing of the past.
The World Health Organization has set an incredibly ambitious goal: 0 human deaths from dog-mediated rabies by the year 2030. And you know what? For the first time in all of human history, thanks to some major scientific breakthroughs, that goal is genuinely within our reach.
So what's in this new arsenal? Well, instead of relying on expensive treatments made from human blood, we now have something called monoclonal antibodies. These are highly effective, lab-grown molecules that are way cheaper and safer. And using the same tech that gave us COVID vaccines, we now have temperature-stable RNA vaccines that don't need refrigeration. This is a complete game changer. It means we can get life-saving treatments to the most remote and hottest parts of the world where rabies hits the hardest.
And ultimately, that's what we've learned. We can't outsmart this virus once it has its grip on the brain. The real victory isn't going to come from some dramatic last-minute cure in an ICU. It's going to come from prevention, from vaccinating dogs, and making sure every single person who gets bitten has access to these incredible new tools. The perfect killer can be stopped, not by fighting it head-on, but by making sure it never even gets the chance to fight at all.